Okay, so in this video, I want to talk about templates, or also what's known as generic programming, and also about exception handling. So let's get started. Okay, so let's say I create a simple function to divide two numbers. Right, so let's say I make it int, the return type, call it divide, and I'm going to divide two numbers, int x and int y. And then I'll return x divided by y. Okay, so let's test out this function in our main. Or actually, let's see out divide. And I'll divide the number 30. And I'll divide by 10. Okay, so let's test that out. That should work okay. Yeah, so we get a 3, right? Because 30 divided by 10 equals 3. So that's working okay. But what if I want to, let's say, let's close this out. Let's say I want a function to divide two floating point numbers, like two doubles, let's just say. Alright, so if I do this, I should get an error. Right, because the parameters for this function are two integers. But here I'm passing two floating point numbers. So I could do function overloading instead. Right, so I could do this, copy. And then I just change all these out to double. Right. Remember, function overloading. Now let's see if that works. Okay, yeah, so that worked. So we fixed the problem somewhat. But rather than using function overloading, what we could do instead is we could use a template. Right, because the logic for this function and this function are exactly the same. The only difference is the data types. Right, so when you have a situation like this, rather than doing a whole bunch of different functions that all do the same thing, the only thing that changes are the return types and the parameters, we can use a template instead. So let me show how that works. Okay, so here at the top, declare template, and then class, and then you name the class. The class, we can name it, I think the textbook uses the letter T, like this. But you could be a little bit more descriptive if you want with the identifier. So I could do something like this, type. Oops. Do something like type, like that. Right. Now this is more generic. So then now what we can do is, rather than using int or double or long or any other number type, we can just use our generic data type instead. So we'll change these out to type. Here's type as well. And then here. Okay, so now let's test this function with multiple data types. Right? So here we have the doubles, and then here we have, take out the decimal, right? And then here we have an integer. Right? We have the same, we're using the same function, but now we're using a generic data type or a template. Okay, so then let me try this. Control F5. Right? And now they both yield the same result. Okay, so we could also mix it up a bit. Let's say here I want an integer, but here I want a double, and then I would return a double instead. Right? So we can have more than one class for the template. So then I'm going to delete this, and we can call this type 1, and this could be type 2. And then here we'll return type 2, and we'll take a type 1 and a type 2. Oh, here I need the keyword class. Okay. So then now we can mix it up a bit. So here is going to take an integer, and then this one's going to take a double, and it's going to return the double. Right, so then Control F5, and it returns 300. Yeah, 300 because there's 300 dimes in $30. Right? That's the way I kind of see it. The problem with this, though, is that it gets very confusing to use multiple types for the template. Alright, so Control F5. See what happens here. And here we get 0. It gets very confusing to use. Alright, so I would probably recommend just sticking to 1. Right, but you might find yourself in a situation where you're not sure what you're taking 2 parameters and you're not really sure what the 2 data types are. So something like this might help you out, but it can get a little confusing. Okay, so I'm going to undo all this. Right, and we'll just stick to 1 generic type. Okay, I'm going to delete this. Now I want to talk about exceptions. Right, so what happens when I try to divide 30 by 0? Then Control F5. The program crashes because you're not allowed to divide a number by 0. Any number that's divided by 0 is undefined. Right, so rather than the program just crashing on us, we need to code this in a way where if the user does input a 0, rather than the program crashing or coming to a halt, we want to throw out an exception, or we want to throw out a message that tells the user, hey, you did something wrong, don't do this. So let me show you how to do that. So the thing with writing exception handling is that you have to first anticipate what type of error the user is going to make. Right? So the one error that we have here that we're dealing with for this example is division by 0. Right? So if this parameter, so y, is equal to 0, then we need to do something. Else, we can just go ahead and run the function normally, right? Because then if it's not 0, then it should be able to divide okay. Okay, so what we can do is we can create an error message. I'm going to use the data type string for the error, string error, and then I'm going to put something like error cannot divide by 0. Okay, so that's my error message, that's my string. Now I want this message to display to the user. Right? And the way you can do this is you can throw an exception using the keyword throw. And then I'm going to throw what? I'm going to throw the error. And then if this condition occurs, then we're not returning anything. And we have to return something. This is an avoid method or function. So I'm just going to return 0. Okay, so let's try this now. See what happens. Control F5. Okay, so we still got an error. Scary one. So let's go ahead and abort that. Right, so even though we're throwing an exception, we're throwing an error, we need to catch that error so that way we can display it to the user. All right, and the way you catch exceptions is by using what's called a try-catch block. Right, so what I'm going to do is in the main, I'm going to try and divide 30 by 0. If for some reason it doesn't work, then I need to catch the exception thrown by the function. Right, so you catch, and then it's set of parentheses. The thing that is being thrown is a string. So then we have to catch the string, and you can give it any identifier. So usually we can use just the letter E. Right, so as soon as the error occurs, then the error is going to be thrown, and then it's going to be caught by the catch block. Then we can see out the error. So E in line. Okay, so now let's try that. Right, and here's the error. Cannot divide by 0. Alright, but let's say I don't have an error. I'm going to divide 30 by 10 again. Then it's going to try it, see if it works. And it works, and it gives you the 3. So that's how you can handle errors or exceptions. But the problem though, or the difficult part, is coming up with all the different types of scenarios that the user might do, and then writing an error and a catch block for each one of those. Right? You can put multiple catch blocks together. See, maybe I have another string E or something else here. and then you can have different ones, right? Depending on how many possible errors could occur in the program. Okay, so I think that's about it for this video. Thank you very much for watching.